Okay, welcome to Second Session Podcast from India. We're now in Delhi. We just traveled yesterday from Puri Gadwal, 7,000 feet. We spent 5 days doing a camp with Indian athletes. There's a bunch of race walkers that were on the track while we were working out too.
Yeah.
But we were coaching the runners. And the exciting thing about this is we're coaching the coaches to coach the athletes. So we're not attempting to jump in and own a program or revamp the coach's thought process entirely. Like, our goal was to come in and give them some improvements potentially they could make from an outside perspective looking in, which, man, I love that for myself as a coach when someone else does that for me.
Yeah.
So that was the idea. We wanted to help them, but not own or take over any part of the training, just be a support. And one of the things that we focused on, and I think is a key as a coach in the current world we live in, is you've got to understand the body. You've got to understand physiology. You've got to understand lactate, how it processes in the body, how we can train different systems, because VO2 max work is relatively easy to understand. You run 3K or 5K race pace, you repeat the reps, give 3-4 minutes recovery, and it's pretty straightforward because it's determined by race pace. Easy running is pretty easy to determine by heart rate. It's fairly consistent. I think lactate is one of those things that can be really out of whack for someone if they don't have a measurement that is in the blood, because you can have an athlete that is a high tolerance lactate producer and they can handle a high amount of lactate up to 12, 18 millimoles. And you can't really see what's going on inside their body. So if someone's doing a workout and their lactate is slowly climbing,
Yeah.
there's going to be a point where they can't do that workout anymore.
Now, before we dive into the numbers, do you want to talk about generally what it is, how you test, and what it is that you're looking for?
Yes. So you can think of lactate in lots of ways, and there's lots of parameters. If you want to Google a great way to think about it, you want to read further, Google Marius Bakken lactate explanation. And maybe we'll have that link in the show notes, because he was kind of the founder of the modern lactate interpretation and like the Norwegian method. And Ingebrigtsen gets credit for it more often than Bakken does, only because he's made it re-popular again. So that'd be a great place to start, but I'm going to give kind of my mind breakdown, which Marius gets way more detailed than we're going to get here, but I'll give you a starting point. So if you think of lactate threshold 1, or you'll see LT1, you can think of that as 2 to 3 millimoles. And you can measure it with a lactate meter like we did in our
At the camp.
So you can think of this as high level aerobic work up to 3 millimoles. You should be able to do this a very long time if you only go 2 to 3. That's like your marathon paced running, and maybe even a little faster. You can probably run marathon pace a little bit faster than LT1, but that would be highly aerobic lactate training. And then LT2 is what we typically think of as anaerobic threshold. That's 3 to 4. And you can stay there quite a while. So an untrained or a moderately trained person Actually, let me clarify. An untrained person can't stay there long at all. But a moderately trained athlete that's running and practicing can stay there probably 20 to 30 minutes.
20 to 30 minutes. So we are looking at slightly under 10K distance?
Well, it depends on the athlete.
Depends on the athlete.
Yeah,
okay.
it's just a time constraint. And then a super trained athlete can stay there probably an hour, maybe even more. So that's 3 to 4. And you can think of that as your typical anaerobic threshold. And we explain this to the coaches where if you were to do a lactate threshold test on the treadmill that slowly got faster and faster, you would reach a threshold or an inflection point in your lactate where it climbs, and then at some point it exponentially climbs.
Yeah.
That, somewhere around that area, is your anaerobic threshold. And then LT1 is just below it.
Yeah. And I want to come in here because we had 3 groups, so 2 groups of guys and 1 group of female runners. For the guys, we had them at 140 to 142 for 400. For the second group, we had them at 78, and for the girls, we had them at 130. So it's interesting that for the guys, we saw the readings at 7.9 and 15, but the girls, they were running 130. We saw the readings around 3.2, 2.9.
Yeah, and Kim's talking about the paces for the different groups and the different groups we tested. Well, I think one of the reasons the men's was higher is those were middle distance athletes that were training for 800, 1500
That's
primarily.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why it was good that we explained this is middle distance athletes need to have good lactate processing and buffering ability as well. So naturally the girls that were running 6-minute pace and are marathoners, their lactate numbers were in between LT1, LT2. They're 3.6 around there, and even got down to 2.6 at points.
2.7.
So it fluctuated in there. So I want to explain a little bit more about lactate and why lactate threshold 1, lactate threshold 2 is important. So there's another term, lactate tolerance. So if we're looking at how high can your lactate go, so somewhere around 20 millimoles for a middle distance runner, 12 to 18, maybe even 20, and then sprinters can get up to 30. So they're highly trained on the lactate tolerance side. The reason LT1 and LT2 is important is there is a limit to how much lactic acid you can tolerate. So by definition, that system of tolerance is limited. Like you're not going to get higher than a certain point.
Yeah.
But you can process more. And in fact, lactate is used as a fuel. And especially when it doesn't over accumulate. So I wrote down a couple areas that it's used as a fuel. It's used locally, burned in the muscle to create energy. It's shuttled between fibers and organs to create energy. It's recycled in the liver for energy. It supports good central nervous function, and it triggers other endurance adaptations. So this notion, when you heard years ago or from your high school coach or whatever, we got to get the lactate out of our legs and it's been 2 hours later. It's already out. It's already gone through all these processes and it's out of your legs. And in fact, from a chemistry standpoint, the lactate's not the problem. It's the byproduct of the lactate is hydrogen ions. And what hydrogen ions do is they lower blood pH, increase acidity. And then the interesting thing here is you've got nerve endings in all of your muscles. And these nerve endings register this acidic environment. The nerve endings then communicate with your brain and they start shutting down your central nervous system. And the shutting down is protective. And it's protective to make sure that you don't create an overly acidic environment for a prolonged period of time that results in muscle damage. So the lactate's not really the problem, it's the hydrogen ions, and then the acidity is the problem. And it's a protective mechanism. Well, if you don't challenge the lactate tolerance over and over and over, but you challenge LT1 and LT2, you essentially delay your fatigue. And you're specifically delaying your central nervous system fatigue, which means when you're a coach and you're watching your athlete on the track, when they're in LT1 and LT2, you can actually see the body language. We talked about it at the track.
Yeah.
When they're hitting it right, you're watching them and their movement's fluid, their legs are popping off the ground, and they're not in this heavy fatigue level where they're just surviving. And I do think as an athlete, you can feel that. I think if you test it enough, you can feel it. You also can draw some inferences if you test fairly often with your heart rate. Now that's tricky because of heat, cold, other fatigue levels, and that's why you see a lot of the pro athletes and non-pro athletes like us testing often to like do a check-in and see how the lactate is accumulating or not and adjust the pace. So the goal is to make sure with this specific workout that you're inside one of these zones, depending on the goal of the workout, and you're creating lactate and you're clearing it. So think of it this way. If I'm going to use these athletes as an example.
Sure.
So two of the athletes, the girl, Sonam and Bhagirathi, are marathoners.
Yeah.
They were running about 6 minute to 6:10 pace. And they were between 2.6 and 3.5. 2.7, 3.5.
Yeah, roughly.
Brilliant. They did 12 times a K with 90 seconds recovery at 7,100 feet elevation.
Yeah.
Which tells me they're going to run that pace or better for a marathon at some point with some more development. So when is this appropriate and when is it not? So at some point, we do want them to do some lactate tolerance training or some VO2 max training. Like, we're not just going to do lactate threshold training and then call that, the end of our training methodology. But as a marathoner, man, we want to massively get... Our goal is actually to accumulate as much lactic acid as we can.
And tolerate it.
And tolerate it and buffer it.
Yeah.
So if you think of it this way, let's say you run 20, 30K of work at 6 minute pace and your lactate is always under 3.7. And you've built up to that over time. You've actually produced way more lactic acid than someone who only runs 6 minute pace for 20 minutes. And so I think as an athlete, your goal should switch. It shouldn't be to avoid lactic acid. Your goal should be to accumulate as much as you can, buffer it, tolerate it. And then I want to ask a few questions and then answer them. So what happens if you start a workout and you're all of a sudden at 6.0 or 4.5? Have you ruined that lactate session?
Well, to me, that tells me that I need to take a rest, a bigger rest than I had planned, and then try it again, and maybe try at a slower pace. Because your body it's not just keeping it there, it's clearing it out. So the whole session is not a washout.
Yes. I think there's two ways you can approach it. You can not take additional rest, and you can slightly slow down and then test the next rep and see if it's coming down. You can do that, and that's totally fine. You haven't ruined anything, and then you can get it down, and then you can hang out where you got it. Or you can take a 10-minute rest and just totally restart the workout and run slightly slower and then continue on your way. I think both methods are appropriate, as long as you're looking at 6.5 to 4.5 being over. Once you get to 8 to 10, you don't need to, if your goal that day is a lactate threshold workout, you need to pause it. You need to wait 10 minutes and restart. So those are your kind of barriers to entry. Like once it's 8 to 10, you've gone way faster than you need to for that workout.
Yeah.
Now here's another twist on this. Let's say you're getting ready to race a mile, 5K, 3K, 10K. A great workout would be to let your lactate get up.
Yeah.
And then what I would do is I would shorten the intervals. Like you could do like a mile fast, let it get up to 8 or 10, take a 5-minute break, and then do some 200s and 400s with it slightly elevated. So that's a great, not necessarily upper limit lactate tolerance, but that would be a great race specific workout where you're preparing for a fast start and then a settle. So I just want to frame that so people don't think of lactate as bad, but you understand it to the point where you can manipulate it. And that was our goal with the coaches, is like get down to the science of it and explain how we can manipulate the training to accomplish the goal we want to accomplish for the day. And this is different than, what if you go to the track and you say, hey, we're going to work on our lactate buffering. You don't test, and then you just send the horses out of the gate.
And hammer it.
And you hammer it, and you think you did a lactate threshold workout, but in reality, all you're doing is VO2 max work.
Yeah.
And we covered this with the coaches too. Similar to lactate tolerance, it is a more difficult task to raise your VO2 max than it is to improve your lactate threshold. Yeah. And in fact, I think a lot of athletes get stuck on super hard training, killing the VO2 max work, and then they neglect their lactate threshold. And the way I asked the coaches this question was, would you rather have a high VO2 max at a low percentage, where your threshold is at a low percentage of that VO2 max, or would you rather have a slightly lower VO2 max and your lactate threshold as a higher percentage of that VO2 max? This is where the Garmin data drives me bananas, because I get athletes all the time citing that they're out of shape,
Garmin said so,
or their Garmin said that their VO2 max went from 50 to 48 or 57 to 53, and they're worried because their Garmin said that they're not in as good of shape.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly reminding them that, number one, the Garmin data is not great yet.
Yeah.
I think at some point it will be.
Yeah.
And then number two, VO2 max for endurance athletes is not the gold standard. What the gold standard is, what percentage of your VO2 max is your lactate threshold?
So explain that in terms of floor and ceiling. Remember the example we got?
Yes. Okay, so while we were doing this coach's clinic, explaining this on the whiteboard, and Khem is translating into Hindi for a couple of the coaches that didn't speak as good of English. Several of them spoke very, very fluent English. My brain, I was like, oh, this is such a great way to explain it. And the analogy is, let's say that you have two options to improve. You can either bring in a ladder to this room and you can walk up the ladder and you raise your lactate threshold. All you do is you got a ladder and you walk up that ladder, you've improved. Or we can tear down the ceiling in this room.
Yeah.
And you can stand right where you are and no ladder.
Nothing.
And we're going to rebuild the ceiling. That would be the comparison of raising your VO2 max difficulty compared to improving your lactate threshold.
Yeah.
Now, I will say there is one way that you can raise your VO2 max without tearing off the ceiling. And that is if your weight goes down without your power going down. And your power can even go down some if your weight goes down. It just can't go down drastically.
And there is a risk there.
There's a risk there of injury issues, particularly for ladies in trying to lose weight. Hormone imbalance. But there's also a benefit. And I really want to be the kind of person that is capable of talking in nuance, in detail about things.
Yeah.
And not saying you should never lose weight because there's danger there. Well, you should have some barriers to that. But there is a reality that if you do get leaner without these other drastic risks, the denominator of VO2 max, it's milliliters per kilogram per minute.
Yeah.
Anytime you lower the denominator in a fraction, the number goes up.
Sure.
So there is an opportunity to do both.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm super passionate about, doing it properly with the right timing.
Yeah.
That's another conversation. But I did want to acknowledge there is a way to improve VO2 max without tearing down my ceiling.
Yeah.
But the goal here with these athletes was to add another layer of capability in their coaching arsenal.
Yes.
Of how to properly do lactate threshold testing, how to test it, and then for the athletes, giving them the agency of how they feel during this.
Yeah. So it's important because I think we were talking about, we're thinking about these things as different levers that you can pull on. And one of the things that I found interesting is when we did the testing and we put the athletes in the group, how some of the athletes were rotating back and forth, but how some of the athletes were not doing that. So do you want to talk about how, even in an individual sport...
from the pacing side?
From the pacing side, the support system still matters?
Yeah. So one of the challenges with this group was there are several coaches, and the athletes that were similar in ability weren't always training together. And I think that is appropriate sometimes. But there's a significant benefit if you have somebody close to you where you probably should meld the workout ideas. And man, I do that all the time when I have an opportunity to work out with someone. So this summer in Flagstaff, I had a chance to work out with a couple of the pro guys, and I had a relatively short workout. They were doing a marathon workout, and it meshed. And so I just jumped in for a couple reps and then jumped out and did a shorter rep and hit my goal, and I still had someone to work out with.
Yeah.
And these athletes were doing an incredible job the other day. Totally on their own.
Not planned.
We gave them pacing groups.
Yeah.
And they were just negotiating within themselves how to rotate on reps and laps and who was pacing. And it's not just the benefit of wind, which there is a significant benefit even in running. And you see that with Kipchoge when he did the sub 2 hours.
Yeah.
And they created like the flying V from Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
With the car and all of
the runners,
the lasers and all this stuff because, man, they were estimating like 1 to 2 minutes over the marathon with this V formation and everything. And that actually matches up. Because if you think he ran like 1:59:40, and then it was like 2:01 at the time was around
that was his
the race effort. And now I think it's 2:00:35 from Kiptum. I do think we'll see a sub 2 hour at some point in our lifetime for sure. I think it's coming pretty soon. But so they get the benefit from the wind, but you also get the like emotional and connectivity benefit of having somebody to sit behind, and then you get a rest. So for me, I've always felt like leading was easier in a group. Like for me personally, I feel like the stress of leading was always easier. Like if I would do rotate 400s with somebody, oh, the power just went out. And it's back on. That does happen in India.
Reminds me of 40.
Yeah. Power out, power on, power out, power out. So in the place where we stayed, Party Godwall, there's no power for minutes at a time.
Yeah.
And there's no heat.
There's no heat. There's no central heat.
There's no central heat. So it's 44 degrees at night in our room, and we've got these little space heaters, and then the power goes out, and we're like, dang it. It'll be cold, and then it comes back on. Anyway. But yeah, so I think there's a significant benefit to where you're at, and sometimes leading, even though you're getting the wind, feels better just because you're like excited.
Yeah.
So from a racing standpoint, sometimes it's nice to jump up and touch the lead of the group and then fall back in. But it's definitely more efficient to be behind people, even if it feels easier to lead.
Yeah. So we're talking about you individually, what you like. Now, one thing that I've noticed about you is you've been going on and running and trying to push yourself for a very long time. How many years has it been since you first started running?
So I think I was like 12 or 13, and my sister ran cross country, and I went and ran with them. And I think 14 was when I first broke 5 minutes in the mile. So it's been 30-something years that I've broken 5 minutes in the mile every year.
And you did a time trial at 7,100 feet approximately.
Yeah. So one of my like, I actually did a podcast on side quests, like how to do them and like how to create them. And one of mine now, after so I was in Europe in October, just a family trip, and I ran 4:49 for the mile in St. Moritz at 6,900 feet. And I just had this idea before doing that. I was like, man, that would be so cool to run a sub 5 mile on every continent. And it's stupid. It's a stupid, silly thing. But aren't all our goals silly?
Sometimes, yeah.
Like,
to someone they sound silly.
Yeah, I mean, what is the significance of a sub 2 hour marathon? Is it really better than a 2 hour and 25 second marathon? Like, it's better by 26 seconds, but what is the significance of that?
Yeah.
It's just like breaking these round numbers. And it's just the idea that you have something to do, something to chase. And so that's what I'm always encouraging athletes to do, encouraging you to do, myself to do, is to think about something that keeps me mentally engaged.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to do is retire or quit chasing things. And so I came up with this 7-continent thing when I was in St. Moritz, ran 4:49, and then yesterday
Before we left?
ran 4:37 for the mile.
Yeah.
And it was awesome pacing. It was 67, 69, 69, 69, and then the little point or 1.8 at the end. And the funny thing is, in the video, I said, I'm not going to cheat. I'm going to start at the correct line. And then I started at the wrong line. But luckily, I started at the 2-mile
Not the 1 mile.
line, which a mile is 1,609 meters. So I technically ran 1,618 meters. But then I looked back at the video and got it right. And it was like 4:37 for the mile, which is significantly under 5. But I picked under 5 because it's one of those round numbers. And it's doable.
It's doable. Now, you and I have talked about, why people quit. And one of the things that kept coming up in our conversation is fear of failure. And you've been going on for a very long time. Talk to me about how you deal with it, and if you have any tips for folks who are listening, how to keep going.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier today. I mean, ultimately for me, I view myself as forgiven, loved, made by God, and ultimately there's nothing that any failure can do that will affect me as a person. And we also talked about, I think Ingebrigtsen, I don't know his spiritual worldview, but he's got some of that playing in the worldview background, where he's not determined by his performances, or else he wouldn't have run world championships this year. Because he knew he wasn't in shape, and he was like, hey, I'm here to race, and if I lose, I lose, and I'll try again. And it doesn't mean that I am a loser. It just means that I lost on that day.
Yeah.
And so that's how I view. That's how I view my training. That's how I view daily, the things that I do. And I think that's one of the best ways to view life and processes. You're not defined by your performance. There's more there.
Yeah, it's funny because, I mentioned about one of my favorite author, Brené Brown, and she talks about how we shame ourselves into believing something that's just a snapshot, right? So I may not be able to run the time that I want to run, but that doesn't mean, hey, you cannot run that. You kind of reframe that and saying, today, that was not my day. But you don't say I'm a slow runner.
Yep. I think that is the balance, not to get too negative, but I think that's the balance of good and evil. I think it really is. That shame part.
Yeah.
That is not, if you evaluate something, that's not good to shame yourself into action. And if it's not good, it's got to be evil. It can't be good. And so I think a lot of times if you do that no pain, no gain, or go hard or go home attitude, you end up going home. I always joke, if you say go hard or go home, that's a silly saying, because you're gonna go home anyway.
True. Where are you gonna go?
Yeah, you're not gonna stay away from home forever.
Sleep on the track?
Yeah. So in my mind, it's I'm gonna go hard and go home and live with the result.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem with these one-liners that we've gotten so in our culture with the Instagram one-liners, and that's why I don't really like short form content very much, because I feel like it just hits on nerves and really doesn't get to the depth of a conversation. And then you turn into this just clickbaity wheel of little sayings that don't really mean anything. And I think they lead to really shallow approaches. And then back to why people quit. I think that's why people quit.
So
it's really shallow efforts and really shallow approaches. And that's also not to say that you can't change your trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Like you can come up with a goal and a side quest.
Absolutely.
In something you want to do, and you can find out that that's not actually what you wanted to do, and you can change it and shift. Like athletes all the time will be like in a marathon. You're a great example. You're in a marathon cycle where you're doing 1 to 2 marathons a year.
Yeah.
And then you got into it and you were like, wait a second, I got to shift my focus here.
I could not do it.
Yeah, and so now it may shift back.
Yeah.
But now where are you at?
We're doing short stuff. You're focusing from mile all the way up to half marathon. Like, to keep me almost like a side quest now for me, right? Because you're right, because when I was looking at marathon after marathon after marathon, that these builds, they wear you out, and I felt like I was chasing something that was not sitting well with me. I was not challenging myself enough. So we got together like, hey, look, I have this marathon coming up, and I had a really good long workout, but the workout after that was a much easier workout, and I just couldn't do it. And I would like to believe that it was more psychological than physiological. You just don't lose fitness within a week.
I think if you're excited about something too, like when you were marathoning more often, you're excited to do it.
I wasn't excited anymore.
It's okay to not be excited about one path.
Yeah.
Switch your trajectory. What I think's not okay, and I think it comes from a place of shame and of like, kind of throwing your hands up in the air. It's not okay to just quit. Like, and just say, I'm not doing anything. Like, so I have this athlete I coached several years ago, and he was in high school, and he came to me one day and he was like, hey coach, I think I'm gonna not run this year and I'm gonna play soccer. Or no, he didn't say that first. He said, I'm not gonna run. I think I'm gonna quit running. And he thought that I was gonna talk him into, no, don't quit, don't do it. And I saw in his face, he was really not wanting to run. And I said, man, that sounds great. What are you gonna do with your time? What are you gonna do that's excellent? You've been on this path of excellence of being a runner. What is your new path? I want to know. I want to encourage you into your new thing. And he was like shocked. He was like, and he said out loud, he was like, you're supposed to talk me into staying. And I was like, no, that's not my job. My job is to encourage you on the path that you want to go.
Yeah.
And so he didn't know what to say. He thought about it. And he actually came back and said, I was going to play soccer, but I think I need to finish out the season because I committed to my team. And I was like, great, well, let's finish it out really well. And I think that was a great lesson for him, because if I had talked him into it, he would not have had to go through that mental jujitsu of figuring out, wait a second, what do I really want to do?
Yeah.
And so that's one of my goals with athletes a lot of the times when they say to me, what do you think I can run? I'll say, well, what do you think you can run? And just making people think and process and like dig into their goals, I think is super healthy.
Yeah. You're touching upon something that I've always admired about you and Run Free, is that it's not just an approach to make you run faster or stronger where you want to be, but also other aspects, that the whole 5-finger approach to training. Because you're dealing with a human being. You're not dealing with a machine that you can give workouts to and keep track of their lactate readings and have them perform where you want them to perform. So taking that view to me is really important. So, we talked about how you are keeping yourself out of, or keep competing, right? and we have talked about one of the aspects that goes into it is this idea of play, where you're keeping yourself like energized, and talk about that.
Yeah, I think that is side quests. I think it's creativity. I think it is looking for new ways to improve. We talked about this the other day. I think it's going to the track and joking around and laughing and not being so locked in that you can't like engage with something funny or silly.
Yeah.
But I think there's some personality to that too, right? Like some people maybe aren't going to play in the same way that you and I
Sure.
engage with like fun and exciting things. So I think the important thing is to ask yourself, like, how can I enjoy what I'm doing? So I've got a great example. So one of the guys, the Run Free athletes, who's really data driven, his name's Barry. I encouraged him to leave his watch at home, and he didn't want to do that. And so we settled on just start it, but don't look at it.
Okay.
Like cover it up. And actually, I like my data too. And so sometimes I'll run without my watch, but a lot of times I just don't look at it until I'm finished. Or, but I like data too, so I don't want to make it sound like I'm afraid of the following the data. Like I was checking every split during that time trial because I wanted to stay on. But he did this and then texted me back and was like, dude, that was fun. That's what I think you look for. You look for things that are fun and that like light your brain up and make it different and challenging in a new way. Some of those that I've done before are time trials. I think are really fun where you don't look at the watch.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to. And so I still like the data, so I try to get someone else in that scenario to actually take the splits but not tell me.
Yeah.
I think that's a fun way to do it. So I paced Rory this summer for a 15 miler, and I had my watch going. He had his watch going, but his watch was set on heart rate screen only. And this was back when, this might have been 2 summers ago, I can't remember. But this was when Ryan was coaching him, and Ryan told him a heart rate parameter to hit, and he wasn't allowed to know the pace. And so I knew the pace, and while he was running, I was encouraging him. I saw a look on his face, he was like, oh no, I don't feel like I'm doing good. And I didn't tell him the pace, but I was like, hey, you're still running really fast. You may not feel like it, but trust me, you're on. And that lifted his spirit. So he got done and he ran like a 15 or 30 second PR for that 15 miler just based on the heart rate. And it was like, whoa, that was crazy. I did not feel like it was that fast. And then he was super stoked about it, but only after it was done. So it's like creating these, like, I think creating wonder sometimes is really fun. Another one I did last summer was I did a time trial on the track, and I did not determine how far I was going to go.
Oh, talk about that.
That was weird. So my wife came out and timed it, and I said I'm going to go somewhere between 600 meters and 1,200.
As fast as you can run.
I was just thinking about a feeling.
Okay.
Like I was thinking about, I wanted to feel a certain way from a form standpoint. And I was like, I'm going to lock into this really fast, but really like poppy form. I'm going to see how long can I hold this form. And when I feel the form start to fall apart, as the power goes out again,
And
back on. Like I said, as the form falls apart, the power goes off. That's like an analogy, right?
There you go.
The form falls apart and the power goes off. I might change that. So when I felt like the power was going to go off, I would run maybe another 100 meters and like finish out wherever I was at that moment. So I ended up going 1,000 meters, but I finished. I had zero clue what my splits were. I just knew how I felt. The funny thing is, that one workout, it felt so good that I've started to chase that feeling while I'm doing other workouts, like that specific day.
Now you have a snapshot.
Yes, I have a snapshot of like a feel to chase. And I think you can get that with lactate pretty well too if you test it enough and you get good at it, at looking at it. You can get the feel. It's not that elusive, but I think it does take regular practice to get to.
Yeah. Now, when we were coming here for this trip, we had an idea what we were looking for. Now when you're about to fly back home tomorrow, less than 24 hours, what is your reflection on this trip? What are you taking away from this trip that you're going to remember?
So I guess from a coaching standpoint, because that's basically all I think about, and that's how my mind works, is I think the athletes that are in Potty have everything they need to succeed. There's minor tweaks, but it's not major. Like the coaches are good, the facilities are good, the elevation is correct. Even the roads are good to train on. It's at pretty high. The track is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
The track's better than Flagstaff, better than St. Moritz, better than Gunnison. It's the highest and best track I've ever been on. I mean, it's soft, it's responsive. It's 2 years old?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I think the gym's good. They just need more access to it, more regular access. So I'm just excited to see a year from now, 2 years from now, Bagirati's running Chicago in 2026. That'll be exciting. I think she's going to absolutely crush it and surprise so many people.
Mm-hmm.
To have an Indian athlete from a small town come and run really well. And the other thing that was surprising to me is how fast, so we did that lactate threshold test, and then the next day they were doing some longer strides. And I was surprised how fast she was moving. And then I think Sonam's even faster. Am I right? From like a mile standpoint.
Yeah, from a mile standpoint.
Yeah. So, I mean, these girls look like pro athletes that you would see, American pro athletes in Flagstaff. I mean, they run like them, they look like them. I think Bagirati looks to me a lot like Des Linden. Sonam has a little more height. She's a little taller, and she reminds me of some of like the Kenyan athletes with their pop in their stride. And I think the guys are great, really good shape too. There's a lot of potential there. I think there's like a swagger that the girls have though, honestly. Like they look the part, and they got the confidence.
They were very comfortable.
You can see, sometimes you can just see in an athlete, their mindset comes out in their running form, and you can see confidence in like competence. And I felt like that was the exciting thing that I'm going to take away, is watching really beautiful athletes run, beautiful form, confidence, and composure. Like that's going to be fun. And I think you can have that no matter what level you're at. You can run with that. You can create that mentality, and then people will see it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we talked about before when we emulate other athletes. Like when Kipchoge ran 1:59.40.
Yeah.
Like that next run, after watching that, I was Kipchoge.
Yeah.
I remember you saying that to me. You were Kipchoge.
Oh, I mean, I remember doing this 20-mile workout, and it was in a small neighborhood. And I did multiple in and outs, and one in and out is about I would say 1,000 meter. So you can imagine how many in and outs were there. But I was not tired of looking at the exact same route because I'm still in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm doing that. There are paces in front of me. There's nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You create that in your mind.
In your mind.
And that comes out in your body.
Yeah. And you did the lactate testing on yourself the day before. You did a bunch of Ks on the road, and you're like, man, I'm gonna remember this next time when I'm running. I'm gonna take this whole K with me.
That's a plug for going to running camps.
Yeah.
Like what happens when you get away and you lock in for a week or so is sometimes you carry that with you the whole year. You carry that focused time, and that becomes a large part of your like energy and your motivation for the year.
Yeah.
Is you had ultra focus. And getting away from home, I think, creates this difference. Even when you sleep and when you wake up, you've got none of the distractions that you carry that are like running in the background of the operating system.
Yeah.
It's like the operating system is cleared up.
Yeah.
Like you're able to operate totally different because you don't have all this other stuff that you're just like constantly kind of thinking about in the background. A lot of times when I'm trying to go to sleep at night, I will imagine that I'm somewhere like away, and I'll convince myself I've got nothing to do tomorrow. And this is going to be one of those camps. Now, maybe not with the 44 degrees in the room.
Yes, and power cuts.
And the power going out constantly. But those things make you strong in a different way too.
Yeah, and that's a great point about running camp. When is the Run Free Camp again? This next week?
It's on the website. I forgot the dates.
Okay.
It's in June.
It's in June.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's to me, I remember my first Run Free Camp and going through all the things. It gave me a routine to follow. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have I don't want to say I didn't have a routine. I did have a routine in the Training Peaks app. There are things that I do, but how do you put together those things when we were talking about? Okay, you get up and you do your mobility. We did that with Mitch.
Yeah, the little extras.
The little extras, and you kind of see how you can fit those together in your own schedule. It's kind of hard to see that in the app, but when you see someone, because it's almost 6 days for me with you, and watching you wake up and go through your routines, like, oh, that's what I can do.
Well, and if you create routine, what happens is you can do things on autopilot. And the more good things you can do on autopilot, the better you can fit in more things. So I always remind like young people when they start a new job, or when they go to college, or when they go to a new school, or when you switch careers, or when you move, a large part of the stress there is that you don't know where anything is. You don't know where the bathroom is. You don't know where your class is. You don't know how to get your favorite meal. Everything's new. So you have all this processing power you're having to go through. And then once you get there, your capacity expands. And then you reach that homeostasis again where you're like, oh, I don't feel that busy. Well, I think you can do that with running. You can create a morning routine. You can create a routine where you always have your protein with you post-workout. And then it doesn't become a thing that you forget because it's routine. But it takes an effort on the front end to get there. And I think that's what focus time does for you, is it can create a routine and a process for some of the things that you maybe would struggle to remember to do. And camp is June 10th through 14th in Flagstaff. Yeah, and all that's on the website. But yeah, I think you open up more processing power every time you create a new routine. Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do with these athletes, is give them some core strength, mobility, strength training, nutritional routines, things to grab onto training wise. And then once you get those routines, you just repeat them over and over and over and over. And then 5 years later, you run really well.
Talk about 5 years you run, after 5 years you run really, really well. Talk about the importance of time and staying patient.
So it's kind of funny talking with some of the athletes. They have super high goals, but we challenged them to even higher goals. And that was fascinating. So let's say you've run 250 for the marathon and you want to run 245. And we were like, hey, why not 235?
Yeah.
But let's set that as the 5-year goal.
Yeah.
And that was exciting. So here's how I think about goal setting. I want to dream super big, like pie in the sky big. And I want to put that out there a ways. Even to the point where maybe my timeline's not correct. Maybe I'm dreaming too soon. But that motivates me to get out of bed and to be aggressive with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Now, when you get right down to the race day, or even the week before, I want to get a little more realistic. And then the day of, I do not want to talk about my goals. And you'll actually see that on the pro level. If you're 6 months out and you ask these guys, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going for gold in LA or Paris or wherever the Olympics are. I'm gonna gold medal. I'm not satisfied with anything but gold. 6 weeks before, yeah, I'm gonna see what I can do.
Yeah.
The day of, there's a lot of good competitors out there. We're just gonna go see. I'm just gonna do my thing. Like, rarely will you hear someone with like super high level bravado the day before. They back it down because you realize as it gets closer, you want to have respect for the event. And then, but you have in your back of your mind all this time you've dreamed of this big thing.
Yeah.
So not talking about it in the days to come is not you letting go of that goal. It's just you regulating your emotions and getting them where they need to be. And then once the gun goes off, you can re-lock in to what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And plus, one of the things is if you are staying honest with yourself and have been putting in work, you have something to fall back on. It's not that one thing that I think, and I think we have talked about this, if you have a moonshot, there is a fear of failure. But if you create these routines, whether it's your nutrition, whether it's your mobility routine, whether it's your actual work, if you do them consistently, the chances of you hitting that moonshot are much higher, rather than if you were inconsistent in those things. And I think that's where I find the power of habit or power of routine comes in.
Well, and the thing that I've noticed for myself, and I don't know if this is true for other people as much as it is, I usually hit my goal 6 months later than I wanted to. So the habits that I'm doing right now, they're not for tomorrow or next week. It's for 6 months from now. And then putting together another 6 month block. That's usually when I have like that big goal. I usually fail a bunch of times. And then I just keep at it And then it's 6 months to a year later, I'm like, all right, cool, I made it.
And do you see that consistent with mere mortals and pro athletes?
I think that there's some delusion necessary to do big things. Believing that you can do it in a like almost insane way. And then that produces insane work. And then that's your only chance. Like you're not going to do anything amazing if you don't try and if you don't have like a ridiculous belief that you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase that comes to my mind is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Like nobody start out extraordinary. Everybody start as an ordinary person.
Yeah.
And once you have a dream and you start chasing them, that's how you become extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially, I would almost rephrase that a little. I do think there are people that start out extraordinary.
Sure. Right?
Like there are some people that are just God-given, talented, like crazy. But those people are trying to do extra ordinary things. So you're right. Like in their mind, they're probably ordinary where they're at, and then they're trying to go seven levels higher than you and I even thought could even think about for ourselves.
And they're still.
So it's all relative.
Yeah.
It's all relative, and that goes back down to somebody that maybe they just ran their first 5K.
Yes. Yeah.
And extraordinary to them is that they run a 10K and they finish it. Like, so I think this is thought processes across the board, whether you're a professional athlete or you're a beginner, are totally applicable. And everybody starts at the same point. Everybody starts not knowing what to do, even the very best. And you grow from there.
That's where a good coach comes in.
Yeah. Sweet.
Jay, I'm going to have you close out the podcast. And the image I had in my mind was when we did the first podcast, we had the Himalaya range in the back. And here we have just a, not so great room.
Yeah.
So, yeah, close us out with some thoughts on your trip.
Yeah, so I have an interesting thought that I'm excited to try again. Like, so just, man, the way that I think I'm constantly looking for a new approach or new thought process that can help me and help other people get better. So the thing that I'm excited about, strangely enough, is I'm excited about traveling home. And I'm particularly excited about when I came, I did this thing where I spent 3 hours in each of my stops. 3 hour, so I had 2 8-hour flights and a 5-hour layover. And I wanted to see if I could manage my stress levels and how that would affect jet lag and fatigue. And so I consciously spent 3 hours on 1 8-hour flight, 2 hours during my layover, and then another 3-hour segment on the next flight where I put my earplugs in, had my eye mask on, and I meditated and prayed, and I focused on my breathing, and I just really calmed myself. And I was shocked when I got to India how good I felt, even after missing sleep. And so I'm actually excited to try that again on the way home and see if there's a serious benefit or if that was just a one-off. But I really think that restfulness and like calming my emotional state, cortisol levels, stress levels. I think when I'm on the plane, like there's all these alarms going off in my mind. Like I'm having to sit so still, and I hate that. I want to stand up. And and I'm slightly tired, so I want to go to sleep. So instead of fighting it, I want to just do the same thing where I've got those big blocks of time and then see how it feels when I get home. So that's what I'm excited about, strangely enough.
No.
And I'm excited for the athletes. Like, ultimately, that's the point, is seeing how well they can run in the next few years. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised. I think these girls are going to get Indian national records, and they're going to set some standards that are above anything that anyone's set. And I say girls, the guys have a shot as well. I think the guys were very impressive. I just think the girls were slightly ahead of where the guys are at.
Oh, what we saw.
Of what we saw.
Yeah.
So there's a couple guys that have a shot to do some special things as well. So that'll be fun to watch.
It's interesting because to me, you're always thinking about where you're feeling and where you are in the world, and you recalibrating these different signals or alarms going off. And like, you know what, I'm going to shut it out. I'm going to focus on internal focus and see how I can bring my cortisol levels down and stay relaxed. I think it goes back to the first episode we were talking about listening to your heart. And I want to take an opportunity to thank you for coming on this crazy trip, because a lot of alarms went off with your visa, with your plane ticket. But, you know, I don't know how we stayed calm through all those alarms, but we're here. And I'm so happy that we were able to make this trip happen. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, man, it's my pleasure. And I did not stay calm the whole time. So credit to you on staying the course. And I followed along afterwards.
All right, Jay, thank you very much.
All right, sweet.
All right.
It's a good one.